This is David Toulis, and I'm glad that we have the best people in Chattanooga planning out our future and planning out your future. They're part of the regional planning agency headed by John Bridger, who's noted, and I would say probably is the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga. And I take the crown off myself in respect, and because I'm a realist. You know, I'm a very realistic person. And in fact, today, I'm not wearing a bow tie just so that I can make the point that John Bridger of the Regional Planning Agency, the Chattanooga, Hamilton County, North Georgia Transportation. Well, no, that's sorry, that's not the right name. It's the Hamilton County Chattanooga Planning Agency. He is the head of that. And he has the smartest bow tie in town. And I'm not wearing mine today. I want you to know that I'm here at the microphone without a bow tie. And that means that your quality of broadcast presentation will be lower than normal. The standard is not quite high enough today to meet the regular level. And so you're just going to have to bear with me. That means to get the same value from David Toulis today, as you might know, that you have to listen, I think maybe about 9 or 10% longer time. So that means that you're going to have to sit in the parking lot for an extra 2 or 3 minutes, assuming you give me 10 minutes a day, and you just give 2 minutes extra today in the parking lot before you go to your meeting. And that will give you the same quotient you normally get from me, your host here, David Toulis, at 92.7 FM, 95.3 HD4 Nougat Radio, that is to say Nougat Radio, the one and only, where I argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. John Bridger, with that snappy look, is really, we should understand, better than all of us together, and to be better than all of us, to be more sapient, more knowing, to be wiser than the marketplace, and to be wiser even than the providence of God. He has a tremendous staff at his disposal. People such as Karen Renich and Melanie Collins, and Travis Kersmersak and Andrew Ray, Hobart Brabson, Roseanne Brown, Pamela Glazer, Karen Hunt, whom I have had the pleasure of interviewing, Courtney Geary. Now, Courtney is involved in long-range planning, and you need to know that for you to succeed in Hamilton County and Chattanooga, you're going to want to give credit to John Bridger, the director. Sandra Harrison, Ronette McIlvain, those are in development services. Also, Justin Turson, in the community design group. You've got to have people like that, like Jonathan Gibbons in the strategic long-range planning department. And these people can't do their work in planning your future without the work of Alita Zeller in research and analysis. And to make sure that research analysis has a long-range perspective, we have Betsy Evans. And you can contact her at any time with questions about your future if you want, at 643-5935, or any of the other very, very competent people there at the RPA. And it's important to personalize these people, because they're not just faceless bureaucrats. The people who are controlling your future and the future of the city as a whole, right? They are human beings. They're made in God's image. I'm very glad to say that. And they are better than you. And I don't say that snidely. I don't say that with to make you resent them, or to somehow think that, well, you really don't need them. I just want you to get a sense of where we are. We're not in a free country. We are in a country that's built on social engineering, and has its, you might say, its hierarchies. There's a hierarchy of authority and wisdom. And the story at Nougat.com today about how the planning group is coming up with some new zones, and it kind of tells us about our helpless state, because effectively, we, not just you personally now, I'm not talking just about you, the individual listener, right? I'm here just for you. And so there's just the two of us, you and me. So we're not talking here about just you and me, the two of us. We're talking about all the other people you know, and all the people I know, and all the people they know, and all the ones they know, on out to 6 or 7 levels. And that would probably encompass everybody in town. We are not qualified to make our own decisions. We constituting effectively the market, right? The free market that we long for. But I think my job, since I'm a pro market, a pro government kind of person, right? I'm very much for government. Is to make these people more estimable in your imagination, and to put faces on them, put names on them, and to make you think, well, it really is okay that we have planners planning out the city. We really couldn't have a city growing up on its own. I mean, people in Chattanooga, they're so loose, they're so careless, they're so vain. People in Chattanooga and people in Hamilton County, they're a man with a business, he's just really not qualified to decide where to put that business. He's really not qualified to shop all the land, to shop the talk with real estate agents, and have an open market for his factory, right, or his light commercial, or his office complex. We really can't let him do that, because in the end he's just selfish and vain. And you can even cite the book about what am I trying to think of? The great book on capitalism that came out in 1776, the Adams. His book can't be, in fact, cites that it is self-interest which makes the market work. That is the invisible hand that the Scottish rationalists were creating to remove God from the world of providence, right? The Scottish rationalists were effectively making war on God in the Christian analysis, take God out of the marketplace and put in instead the invisible hand. That is the theory that we've been most comforted by. Not have to worry about God anymore. We have the invisible hand model, and so we can't have a sovereign God. We really can't have a sovereign business owner or a free capitalist or investor. That really is just too much, because as Adam said, there is self-interest, and we want to restrain that. Self-interest is always bad, and so we have to have, by compulsion, a public interest. Everybody has to have a public interest, and to be made to follow along with the public will, right? The public will as established and as is put into maps and rules and even statutes. We have much statutory language in Tennessee regarding strategic plans and so on. People represented by John Bridger, the executive director, with his bow tie, right? So this analysis is true. If you have a bow tie, you're smart, and since I don't have my bow tie today, we can definitely grant that the executive director of the RPA, the Regional Planning Agency, John Bridger, is. And so as Nuga.com tells us today in the story by Alina Hunter Grah, a hyphenated last name there, Hunter Grah, G-R-A-H, we are hearing about how regional planners are developing a plan to guide growth, right, and address the differences in different parts of the area. Area officials are currently redeveloping the county's land use plan, which guides businesses and residential growth in the metropolitan area. And this plan, what we're being told, is that there's a suppleness in the analysis. There's a new openness to the way things are. And so what we're going to effectively do is take the way things are going now, which we already have had some control over, and we're going to project that out and sort of cement the current trend into a future trend. We're going to cement the way things are going in the different flavors of neighborhoods and sections of town. We're going to cement those to be more in the future like they are now. So there's not going to be fluidity. There's not going to be surprises. There will not be surprises in the future. And so the story says that officials are redeveloping this plan to account for these differences. more specific zoning classifications, and here now this is we know that John Bridger would not claim to be a sovereign or even providential. That the work will include public input. Now, this whole public input idea is largely a facade and a charade. It is all agencies have these comment periods, and they have things such as public hearings, and only in a very few instances do people show up, right? And that's because they see it's in some way a liberty lost or an imposition to be feared by an agency. And so people may flock to an occasional meeting. There might be protest signs and long lists of people wanting to speak at the microphone. But largely, the whole idea of public input is just a facade for being democratic. These agencies are not democratic. They are run top down, and the top is not necessarily an individual, but the top is a concept, right? An agreed upon plan. And the people who are stewarding this plan and this concept are all the staff people under John Bridger. So we have this regional planning agency to guide development, we're told by Nuga.com, and they renew it every so often to make sure growth is done in a way that makes sense for each community. Now, what does that phrase mean? In a way that makes sense. Here, I just see the craft of journalism trying to get something out, right? You just have to say something, so you make it make sense. And the idea there is that, well, the plan in the future somehow fits with what's already there. It builds on what's already there. Well, okay, but if things are going to be doing that anyway, why do you have to have a regional planning agency? Why do you have to have an authority from the state given to these quasi divine beings who are not elected? They're not subject to election. They're not subject to recall. They're probably at best they're subject to indictment for fraud. But that's not going to happen. That does not happen among people like this. There's not that sort of grungy, grubby activity. In 2015, the story says that the planning agency started a comprehensive plan update in an effort to create a unified framework for the future. Now, when I read that, I feel better. I feel, well, a unified framework. Well, obviously you want to have a unified framework, don't you? 800-8949. Maybe you don't. 800-8949. And this is David Toulis. Regional planners are aiming for smart growth by sorting areas of town into specific categories that mirror the types of developments in that area. So in other words, they're just making a close review and inspection of businesses, houses, office buildings, dead space, vacant lots, and the like. Officials then use the categories to guide the growth by limiting what kinds of developments spring up. This is, another word for this is market intervention. Well, we think you really shouldn't be putting your office building there. Or, well, there's the trend in that area is not in favor of a sporting type retail outlet. We think you should maybe be over on this side, over here in the other area. That's what we have here. It's often gentle. It's often suggestive. And the idea is that, well, we have the authority here. We could just absolutely block you. If you're going to be pig-headed about it, we'll just block you. Okay, we'll recommend a no vote before the city council when you ask for a variance. And so what we have is a market intervention that plays on fears and apprehensions and higher costs for the entrepreneur who wants to build his plant here, right? He wants to build his plant here because he knows the man who's got the lot, and the man's willing to sell the lot. But well, we've got these do-gooders who work for John Bridger. We really want to attune. We want to really attune to what makes those places different, he says, so that when we plan, it's not just about use. It's about how buildings are arranged on a property, what kind of green spaces there are, and how things work together. Now, why does not the marketplace figure this out for itself? Is there a defect in the marketplace? Do we have in Chattanooga such lack of context, such lack of artistic vision, that we have people here who are so poor in imagination that buildings will just crop up helter-skelter without any sense of the context? Do people who build buildings and invest millions of dollars in buildings not consult with architects and designers who will give that advice for free, right? And without the taxpayer having to pay for it. do not designers, do not architects, and inventive, creative people in Chattanooga, and maybe they're hirelings from faraway places. The big cities have experts that work here sometimes. Do not they have this power to discern what flows ideally in a particular structure? And then we have this problem of homogeneity. That is to say, things being like. If we have a district in Chattanooga and the planners are saying, well, this district tends to favor commercial, paper pushing type buildings where nothing's really made except ideas are bandied around and phone calls are made. And we think this kind of structure is ideal, but not this factory. Not this factory that has a yard of parts, right? A fence in yard with rusting parts, some of which are under an aluminum dome, right? Kind of industrial places where they make electrical harnesses and things like that. We really can't have that here. Who's to say that homogeneity is good? Who's to say that having clashing interests, clashing outlooks, clashing abrupt changes in neighbors' appearances is not a good thing? Don't we want to have that? Don't we really, living in a city, want to have obstreperous conflict in styles of buildings from one lot to the next? Don't we want that? Isn't that what makes a city, where you have variety, where you have sudden and abrupt changes in manner, not just among people who are waiting in the same line as you are for a sandwich, but in the way the city is built, in the architectural styles? Don't we really want to have that? Don't we really want to have things that don't fit a classification? And there's a band of what's allowable in this district, which is different from a band, a sequence of what's allowable in the next district. Why do we want to have things all alike? Why do we want to have this sort of determinism? It is a kind of determinism. When we have things that grow up in one area cannot change. You have to have the same style of concept. You have to have the same appearance as what came 50 years before. Do we not face in even the new zoning theory of John Bridger the problem that we've always had with zoning, and that is the dead hand, the mortmain of the past? Can we ever have anything new from the zoning presupposition, which is that we own your property? We own your property and we decide what is good for it. And we own the property effectively because if you don't pay your tax on it that funds our light bill and that pays for our staff to be in the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, we're going to take your property from you. The page 1 of the Chattanooga Times Free Press today has a story about that very thing in Rossville. A trailer park owner is behind on his tax bill, and he's being foreclosed upon by the county government, who's offended that it hasn't been paid its rent, right? Because no one can really own land. All we can do today with corporate government and commercial government is to rent it. We can only rent land, and even Georgia, in Tennessee, no one has a allodial title to property anymore, to land anymore. And they say, well, we don't tax lands directly. We just tax the privilege of owning it. Well, that's a dodge. That is a dodge, and we don't have free and clear land anywhere. And I think that if we had free and clear land, a allodial title, again, a common law title, that we would have remarkable prosperity. We would have prosperity that you would not believe. People would come here from around the world to live in Chattanooga, to live in Hamilton County. They would, if Hamilton County said we're gonna end our public school system and make ourselves a tax-free zone. You kill the public school system and let the free market thrive. You cut your property tax in half right there. And then there could be a program developed by the smart nonprofit people in Chattanooga where everyone could be generous, right? We have a conference tomorrow, by the way, at the Feed Company restaurant on Market Street, I think it is. Well, I'm not remembering exactly which street it is, but I'll be attending it, by the way. And there are a few slots left. There's a story at Times Free Press this morning about it. It's about the Generous Church. And if you go to, just by the way, if you go to Generous Church /events, you'll find out about it. And it's a free dinner, a free lunch. And I do urge you to attend. How can Christian people, how can the church in Chattanooga be more generous? Just by the way, that's generouschurch, .org, generouschurch.org/events. A very important event mentioned in today's editions of the newspaper. And I plan to be there and would like to meet you. Now, we can have a much more generous area, a much more prosperous area with liberty. Liberty brings prosperity. If you don't have liberty, you don't have prosperity. You may have some, right? You're always going to have some prosperity. Even at the strongest point in the Soviet Union, there was a thriving private sector, a thriving black market, if you will. Tourists would go to Russia wearing 4 pairs of jeans because they could sell them off their skins for a fortune, right? There was a huge demand for all kinds of consumer goods, and there was the thriving market. Even in the deepest totalitarian systems, you're going to have a free market, if only among the apparatchiks who have the liberty to do what they want. Among them, there's a free market for sure, and even in much lesser measure among common folk who are oppressed by the mechanism of the total state, the police state. You're always going to have some prosperity because human beings are made in God's image and they tend toward prosperity. It's inevitable that even in a small community, you will have some prosperity, some forward thinking, some of that important, some of that essential work that makes for more wealth and more means, right, and more opportunity. But we're going to have in Chattanooga, we have an amount of liberty that's an envy of the world, perhaps. People come from Mexico to live here, such as 13 years ago, Rudy Soto Rodriguez came. He's in the building trades with his wife, Daisy, and their 2 children. He's here, and he wants to prosper in the bubble that we're in right now. So people come from a long distance for the prosperity in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, and we should welcome them. But we could have even more if we could do away with the very idea that we have to have managed growth, that we have to have John Bridger and Karen Hunt at the Regional Planning Agency look out for us. Do we need to be protected? Do we need to have the insurance culture that we have, where government, the state, is always about risk management? That's why we have a police state. We have a police state on the highways, effectively abrogating a constitutionally guaranteed God-given right of travel. And it is there that the poor and the immigrant and the widow and the orphan are greatly oppressed. And I'm doing what I can to help people. I'm doing what limited things I can as editor and publisher and here your host, David Toulis, to make this abuse somehow come to an end. In God's providence, it will come to an end. And we can have a more godly society and a richer society. I suggest that planning commissions, planning agencies should not make you excited and feel safer, because if you feel safer in hearing about them, you're really playing to your own weaknesses. You're playing to your own mistake. The mistake is confidence in the good people, confidence in the people with the bow ties, who are going to plan out your future and make sure that our city, since they have the comprehensive view and you don't, grows in a way where everybody's happy and everybody in one district is like everybody else, and all the buildings look alike and all the children have the same ideas, having gone to the public school, right? And all families with their 1.3 children thinking the same thoughts, living in the same type of houses, because we don't want to have shock and surprise and shock and awe, do we? David Toulis.
3, 2, 1. Chattanooga